Yeah, I had quite a nice little etiquette lesson during that Israel class. Chewing my food in front of the camera. I was like, good thing I don't chew with my mouth open. All right, so the first thing I wanted, so for today's first lesson, we're going to talk about this today. We're talking about, we do 2 classes, 45 minutes, 45 minutes. First one's on the parsha. The next one we do some God material. Hey guys, come on in. Come around the table.
Just remember, you're going to be on TV if you do that.
So you can go to that side. We're going to watch a video first. I don't know if the people who are watching are going to be able to they'll be able to watch this, but it kind of like turns off if. Why is it?
Keep my chair warm for me. First one he comes. So far, people have knocked my coat over twice and taken my chair 3 times. So, close my eyes back.
What's going on?
Man, look at this room. This is a high-tech room, isn't it?
Oh. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Maybe it's where they store it.
Yeah.
This one, high-tech room.
Maybe it's where they store it.
So it's really behind. Look at that.
Could you tell us this one? Could you tell us what we're going to look at and why?
Yeah. I just want to see what's going on with. Absolutely. We're talking about the burning bush today. So I wanted to show you the couple scenes, but it looks like I lost the. There's you. That is me. All right, well, first we're going to watch yeah, that's what I thought. I opened it in 2 different places. I don't know which one's the older one. I think this is the one. Yeah, this is the one. Okay. So I'm still learning all this technology. But, all right. What we're going to watch a couple of the scenes of the burning bush. One according to, you can probably guess what movie. And then one from the animated movie, Prince of Egypt. I don't know if you've seen either one of those. But the first one being Charlton Heston's 10 Commandments. So let's watch and see how. And because movies are midrash, right? A movie is commentary, right? Are they consulting Rambam and Rashi? Probably not. But it's certainly an interpretation of a story.
History books for sure.
You see that strange fire? Bush that burns? A fire. Separate. Taking. So then food in our tent. I will go outside and see this great sight.
That's the 2001.
Even already, this is a midrash, right? He's all by himself in the Torah. There's nobody with him. He's gotta get some more screen time for some other actors, I guess.
It's called drama.
Oh, okay. So you stay here, I'll go ahead. That's the hero.
Yes.
Oh, sure. Your beard's longer than mine is.
You know, but he's packing 357 under that too.
There's a burning bush, wow.
When was this made?
This is my 6th birthday present from my cousins. They took me to see it. So 1956.
Wow.
Yeah.
So even working with the technology that they had to try to make, you know.
Special effects.
I am here.
You gotta turn it up.
I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Lord, why do you not hear the cries of their children in the bondage of Egypt? I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and I have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sons. Therefore I will send thee, Moses, unto Pharaoh,
One who complains.
that thou mayest bring my people out of Egypt. Who am I, Lord, that you should send me? How can I lead this people out of bondage? What words can I speak that they will heed? I will teach thee what thou wilt say. When thou hast brought forth the people, they shall serve me upon this mountain. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds will I write them. Now therefore go, and I will be with you. But if I say to your children,
Okay. So I'm only stopping because the focus is the bush. I'm not.
what is
You
it?
can have a whole conversation about his conversation with God afterwards. But what's interesting is all of the, just the image is ripe for commentary, right? I mean, just, you know, any piece, any little, I mean, this, you know, any piece of the story. All right, let's just, so again, this is what, you know, we've been watching for a long time. This is what kids have been watching since 2000 and something. Just because it's animated, don't not take it seriously. So now he's chasing a goat here. Right? He's still chasing the goat. Anybody see it? I mean, what's it? I mean, each Moses is bold in his own way.
Here I am. Take the sandals from your feet. For the place on which you stand is holy ground. Who are you? I am that I am. I don't understand. I am the God of your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
You were born of my mother, you peasant! You are our brother!
Will you walk with me? I have seen the oppression of my people in Egypt and have heard their cry.
Stop it! Leave my man alone!
So I have come down to deliver them out of slavery and bring them to a good land.
Oh,
A land flowing with milk and honey.
look at this. I don't want to be.
And so unto Pharaoh.
So, let's see what. Let's turn the lights back on. So, just as a starter for our material, a teacher of mine, when he was teaching on, when we were learning about, we were talking about God in Revelation, he showed us the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Do you remember that scene in front of with what's his name? Dreyfuss. Richard Dreyfuss, and he's like 18 years old or something. All the people are standing around the alien ship, and they try to communicate with it. They're using like some sounds and tones and trying to communicate, and all having this. They're all standing like they're standing at the, only thing that's missing is a mountain. Right? I mean, the only thing that's missing is a mountain when they're in this alien encounter. And it's Spielberg. I mean, probably he went to religious school, so I mean, it's just, but just to show. I mean, I always learned as a kid when you go to art museums, you kind of shun away from the biblical, the Jews didn't do biblical images, not just of God, we just didn't do sort of God, we didn't do biblical art that much.
That was done by the Romans.
Right, it was Romans, it was later artists, it was not a Jewish thing. But now we've got movies where all of our stories, our images are up on the screen, so it's a very interesting evolution, I guess. But what are your reactions to the two stories? I mean, how did you see it? Were they different? Were they the same? I mean, does it affect us in any way? To see the story? To see Moses encountering that bush?
I think it puts into perspective that it's a burning bush that doesn't disintegrate.
Okay.
Both of them, because he always puts his hand in it. There's no tinge or anything.
I don't think he puts his, Charlton Heston doesn't put his
No.
hand.
In
The second one
The
does,
second
right?
one, he does, several times. That makes you say, this is supernatural, what's going on? It's not a burning bush, it's something.
It's not real combustion.
I was envious of that experience, of that depth, and how the answers came. I thought those kinds of feelings, and I was envious that he had that.
Yeah, I mean, right, the feeling that we have to work so hard, or, I mean, you want to say, what you want to say more? I don't want to interpret, what do you?
Well, it just comes, you can't work for it. You can't work for it. It just comes. I mean, you can be in a place where you ask for it to come
Mm-hmm.
and let it come, but it doesn't feel like work. And it's,
Sure.
and it's, there's no feeling quite like it.
So what were you envious of? Just
That he had that experience and brought it to the whole world. The people. He had that experience, he had those answers.
now, is that partially because have you felt an experience like that in some ways? Have you had those? What I'm saying is it only no matter what kind of revelation moments we've had, every moment I would be envious of. You know what I mean? It's being moved by someone else's experience. You could have had 100, 1,000 experiences yourself. Doesn't mean you've never had the experience, right? You can still long for the type of connection a person has without having had, even if you've had your own. I was just wondering if that was for you, if it was more not having had an experience with a sense of depth, or is it just an experience like that you're longing for?
Let's see. Why was I envious? No, I have them, so I know what they're like, and so I know what it feels like. And
So it's a longing for more, and it's a longing for, yeah. Anyway, so, I mean, now that we've seen two versions, what is our understanding of the sequence of events? And Moses is tending his flock, and then what happens?
he's called, because somehow he's called, because, he's called.
Okay, so there's a call. Anyone tell it differently, or is that?
Well, some animal, one of his animals or an animal is crying in distress and he goes to look for it.
Okay.
And he falls into this experience as he's looking for it.
Okay.
And he sees this bush burning. And then a voice comes out of the bush. He doesn't know what this burning bush is. He's never seen anything like it. This is my interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the scenes he plays around with it with his fingers to try to understand this flame. And this voice comes and begins to talk to him. I think that was an interesting idea. Was that they will serve me. I will come down and tell them to prepare. And I will come down and they will serve me. I always thought serve them would be follow God, but it could just be prepare this food that they're having down there and serve it to me. And that's the first ritual service, is the preparation of this food, and they're serving God because he told them to do it.
Mm-hmm. So serve me something. Serve me.
Yes, serve me, I'm hungry. Or instead of serve me, meaning follow me. Different feeling, different.
Well, certainly for us today, service, worship doesn't mean, in churches it means putting money in the pushki, right? But for us, it means giving of your time, and it means giving of your kavanah in your prayer. And so it is a much more esoteric, spiritual serving than actually, bringing an offering, preparing food, or preparing, so it was a very different experience. Okay, all right, so he's with his sheep, he hears some call, right? Remember the parts of, so all right, let's jump in, let's go. Let's take a look at the text here. It may be good to get a couple verses before and a couple verses after, as we try to do. And I should add that this is the, that the bush was not consumed is the logo, is the verse of the Jewish Theological Seminary where I went to school. So I kind of like studying this. Trying to know what it means. It's the motto of my school. But we're in chapter 3. So I gave you starting on verse 2. So it says in chapter 3, now Moses, tending the flock of his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, drove the flock into the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. First of all, mountain of God is very funny, right? It says, the verse says, and he came to Horeb. I'm just reading this one, the verse before.
Oh, okay.
But he comes to Horeb, the mountain of God. There's a switch of it, right? Was there a sign on the mountain going zzz, 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 zzz?
My feeling is almost like God choreographed the things that happen. witnessed what's happening in Egypt, and he selected Moses, and he selected that animal to run wild and follow him.
Well, look, there's no, in the Torah itself, there's no animal. Moses isn't chasing an animal.
So he happens to come there,
Right, I mean, he's, you know, that feels like a real orchestration, right? You know, God causes the lamb to run, and that causes Moses to chase it, and then he comes upon the bush, right? Again, in the Ten Commandments, if you remember, he sees it while shepherding. Right? It's the second movie that we saw where he's chasing the sheep up into the hills. So it's kind of already been incorporated into our psyche that there's this chasing of the lamb. It's not here. It's not here. It's interesting. But so, and again, just look at the order of the verses. They're so interesting. Stu, you want to read? Exodus 3:2 by Yirah Malach Adonai.
You want it in English or Hebrew?
Either one.
We'll do English.
Okay.
My eyes twitching
Okay.
from this stuff they put in. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed.
Okay. So that's verse 2. So the angel of the Lord appears, and Moses looks, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush is not consumed. Okay, that's the first thing that happens. So before there's any, so the angel appears in a flame. Right? So it means the fire in the shape of a flame, is the fire in the shape of an angel, you know, or whatever the shape of an angel is. But the bush was not consumed. And now Moses says,
And Moses said, I will turn aside now and see this great sight, why the bush is not burnt.
okay, keep going.
And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. He said, Here I am.
Okay.
Here am I.
Here I am, Here, is it here am I, or here am I? Here am I.
Here am I.
It says, but he named. So, what I wanted, so just a few things to notice, right? You know, again, that that newer version of the movie version, right, has Moses touching the flame, which we would, I mean, it's very, that's natural for us. But this Moses doesn't need that.
In those days, I think the movie is a modern adaptation. Well, obviously both are
Right.
adaptations. I think the cartoon, the animation, is is a 21st century interpretation. I don't, at least in Sesame, in the movie, he bows down and hides his face and takes his shoes off. He doesn't approach it in any way.
His boldness is in his words, not in his,
Not in his action.
not in his actions.
And what he did in the movie is more consistent with what I would have expected.
Which
Of
first
the-
one?
the Noah movie. And that's more of what I would have expected from Moses. The cartoon is exactly that. It's a cartoon for kids.
Right.
I can't take it seriously.
Well, again, I mean, I think there's a lot of good midrash in that cartoon movie. But, and I can't take.
It's more like what it is. People today are more bold.
Yeah, well, that's my point.
This is the way they were doing it.
That's my point. It's a 21st century adaptation. It's not what I
It's a
think.
modern midrash.
Yeah, it's not what I think would have happened.
But again, I mean, what's the point? The point of these three verses, right? I mean, the Torah makes a point to say, when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, right? That's a really important point. The Torah is mentioning that, right? That's not a commentary. That's in the text, right? In other words, there isn't a rabbi who has this value he wants to teach about paying attention, and so he interprets that God waited until Moses turned before. It's in the text. That's a big deal, right? That's not the next layer. Is that what you understand what I'm saying? That it would have made sense to me that that line wasn't there, that was some rabbi who who filled in the blank and said, when did God, right? When did God speak? Oh, it must have been when Moses stopped to watch. Right? Only when Moses, which is the lesson about paying attention. Right? And this whole thing that you don't need to stick your hand in the fire to see that it's not real. If you just pay attention, the bush isn't being consumed. So what do you need to stick your staff in there for? Right? If you just watch. It's sort of like multiple intelligences, right? People want the physical, but in a sense, you could just watch and see. Let's see what Rashi says. Let's see what he comments. Let's see what he says. In the next section. All right, you want to read that?
Where is it?
In the flame of fire, these three comments.
In the flame of fire. In the flame of fire, the heart of fire, like the heart of the heavens, in the heart of the Tabernacle. Do not wonder about the Tav, for we have an instance similar to us. How degenerate is your heart?
Okay, so what's he doing? So what's his hook? Vayira malach Adonai elav b'lavat esh. Out of the midst. Right? But what word is he honing in on? Live. Right? Now again, we said that Rashi is all about the simple, direct translation of the text. This sounds a little bit like Midrash. Right? I mean, but he's bringing textual examples. Right? She brings the Shila Havat and the flame of the fire as that same lave there. Libo, the heart of fire. Right? He's bringing all these proof texts where there's other places where you have this word, seemingly the word lave, within the context of a fire. Then he says, when the top shows up, don't worry, because he's saying that's just grammatical. Right? If there's a hey in between the lamed and the vav, don't worry about it. It's just grammatical. Right? His point is, every time you have fire, what's the message?
Comes from the heart.
It's deep. Right? It's from the heart. Right? There's an essence.
Burning desire.
Burning desire, right? Okay? So in the flame of the fire, deep in the bush. He looked, behold, the bush burned with fire, the bush was not consumed. He really looked in. All right, Rob, next one, from within.
From within the thorn bush, but not from any other tree, because of I am with him in distress, from Psalms 91:15.
Okay, so there are two different kinds of comments that Rashi there are two different styles of Rashi's comments, right? According to just some research that's been done about Rashi. Rashi has two kinds of comments. The first is what's the problem, right? Is there what's the difficulty in the text, right? And so the first comment is in this flame of the fire. It's almost like the lahavat esh is superfluous. What do you need that in the midst of the fire? Duh, it's the fire. What do you need that for? And Rashi's saying, what do you need the lahavat for? Right? From within, right? And so he's saying the point is to tell us about this deep heart, right? So his hook is that word, right? His difficulty is with what is that word doing? This kind of comment from within the thorn bush, right? Why does it say, right? Where does it say, Levat esh mitoch hasneh, mitoch, from inside? This is one of those Rashi, lest you. Right? What's this lest you? What do we, right, fill in the blank here. Rashi's saying, lest you think, right, that God is speaking from where? What does the comment say? Any other tree.
Yeah.
Right? So, I wonder what circumstances might we, the readers, say, well, there's no way God is in a bush. Right? This is what Rashi's thinking, right? Lest some of these modern people, right? Some of these skeptical modern people saying, if I believe, if I was to believe in God, I can promise you, God would not be in a bush. Right? It's just,
Especially a thorn bush.
especially a thorn bush, right? I mean, but so Rashi, this is one of those comments where Rashi's saying, lest you think that God must be somewhere else. Right? Lest you think God is somewhere else. He wants to steer you in the right direction. Right? And what's the value of the bush, according to Rashi? Why a bush?
Why a thorn bush?
Why a thorn bush?
Because it's
It's
simple.
painful to try to get rid of.
What?
So painful to try to approach it.
Okay, right, because it's painful. So if God is speaking from the thorn bush, what does it say? What is the verse in Psalms?
I am with him in distress.
Meaning, what is God doing with the Bnei Israel?
He's aware of the distress, he's among them.
He's among them, he's empathizing, right? He feels for them. He's such a good pastoral caregiver, right? Putting himself in the situation of
Symbolism of the thorn bush pain and what they're doing.
exactly, right? And as Charles Heston says, why haven't you heard the cries of the people? Well, I'm in a thorn bush, okay? So, God was snarky. He could have said that. He could have said, I'm in a thorn bush.
What do you think that feels like?
Right. I mean, yeah, like I'm in, but I mean that there's such beautiful midrash about the rabbis talk about that too, right? I mean, as we suffer, when we suffer, God suffers, right? So God picks the bush. All right, being consumed. All right, that's the next comment. You want to read that? Achal, consumed.
Being consumed like with which no work has been done.
Okay, ubad, right? So there's a verse, whence he had been taken. Like, okay, so he's giving a couple examples of this word achal, right? Consumed. Okay, I think, Gloria, you said that when you have these divine experiences, you don't have to work for it, right? So this consumed. Maybe Rashi, maybe you were embodying Rashi here, because Rashi is saying that the word uchal, right, is with no work. Right? In other words, that the fire, right, just happens. The fire's not working. That's what's beautiful about it. Right? It's not consuming anything. It's not working. It's just, and again, that's the second movie, right, where he has it on his hand. And it's not, it's not consuming. But so, there's no work, no evid, no service, no work. Right?
Is it fire or is it light?
Interesting. Well, it uses the word ish,
Yeah, but
right? But
it's the only thing they could relate to. People in that time didn't understand fluorescence or illumination or.
okay.
Yeah, but you have sun, you have moon, create light.
Yeah, but it was. Now that was during the day, so it had to be brighter than the sun. Wasn't it at night?
Well, I mean, we could have a whole conversation about, picturing God as light versus God as fire, right? I mean, and again, the first movie was just almost like a freeze frame, if I remember correctly. It was just, right? It was just a light, right? It was a little Christological, actually.
If you watch it, there's movement.
Where's the movement a little bit? So there's a little bit of
There's
movement.
radio, I remember those fancy TVs and you can.
Okay, a little radioactive,
Yeah, radio's moving out.
radio's moving out. But in the second movie, fires of God is moving around. It's active.
You don't even see, I didn't even see a bush in the cartoon. All I saw was something that looked like a campfire coming up.
Okay, well, right. It was a thorny thing. It didn't look round.
Okay.
I'm not just talking about the Aish there. I mean, the idea of God as Aish, as fire, right, is, I don't know. I mean, how do you guys feel? Light versus fire for God? And this is the next class in a few minutes, but I mean.
Well, in that moment, it was fire. I mean, to talk to the people, he's got the whole answer of what to do. That's not just a light, that's huge, that's powerful, that's fire.
Right. I need a little more than just light here. It's not just because we're stubborn people, right? I mean, this is a big job. Okay, this is right. So I need some serious serious combustion power here. We need some serious, I would think that, in a more, in a diesel age or something, this wouldn't just be fire, it would be explosions or something. It would be, God forbid, but it would be, it would be really big. I mean, but fire, I think, is in those, in that mind was powerful enough, right? The fire moving around. Fire, really enough to have an impact. Okay. Dorothy, you want to read Rashbam, the grandson of Rashi? Einenu uchal, it did not consume it.
You call it Dorothy, it's.
Gloria. I said Gloria.
No, it sounded like Dorothy to me.
Gloria, would you like, sorry,
Where are we?
Rashbam, the grandson of
Well,
Rashi.
number 2 is.
Number 2.
Okay, even at the point where the flame came forth from the bush, there was no evidence of coal or ash.
So Rashbam here, right? What kind of comment is he making versus Rashi's comment? Rashbam would be going like this to Rashi, to his grandfather. Because he'd say, Rashi, you said that your interpretation is supposed to be about literally what the text means. And here's Rashi going off, waxing poetic about hearts and about whatever. Rashbam is being very technical, right? There's no spirituality in his comment, right? This is just down to the core. It's not like the inner fire is hotter than the outer fire. Is that still true? The inner is hotter than supposedly the
blue, the top of the blue is the hottest part of the flame.
Or is he questioning whether it's fire?
Maybe.
Or you're burning a bush, where's the ash on the
Well, you're saying there's no evidence of actual both anywhere.
Right, so he's asked the question. That's my question.
Maybe. Right, but again, he's being very language.
Right.
He's being very technical.
He's the grandson
Of
of.
Rashi,
Yes.
yeah. Right?
Every
Yes.
generation
As the one up there. Well, again, it was Rashi who said, I'm all about the pshat, I'm all about the simple meaning, I'm all about the literal, and yet Rashi likes to, occasionally,
So far, we've never seen every paper you had wasn't simple.
okay, so look at Ibn Ezra now.
Metaphor.
And look what he says here. So Ibn Ezra is responding to Rashi too. Right? He says, and he saw, yesh mefarshim, there are commentators, like Rashi, right? Like Rashi. There are commentators who say, Bilahavat Esh, that's at this, Bilahavat Esh, is as Bilahavat Esh. But so he's saying, right, either right, with the heart, right? But his comment is simply that, right? What's he saying? That it just means in the heart of the fire, right? That right. That this was, I think Ibn Ezra also is kind of going the opposite way of Rashi here, right? And saying it means that the innermost heart just means, it just means deep. Just means deep. So the oldest commentator is the very spiritual one, and the later ones are trying to bring it back, right? Just there's a depth there. Now again, you could say that Rashbam is making a point about the levels of heat and where you would think the coal or ash might be, or whether it's fire at all if it's not creating any ash or residue. But I just think it's interesting to bring these two comments to look at, just to say, right, that there's a challenge, right? Right, that this is not a case of that sort of that lehavat ish, of that real, spiritual heart. This is just where the next line. So, as Bilev, so Yesh mefarshim b'lavat esh b'lahavat esh.
What are those?
So it's saying that when it says b'lavat esh, right, there are those who interpret it b'lehevat, with the, that it means with the lev. Right, there are those who interpret as Rashi does, right, in a flame of fire. So b'levat esh means shelahavat esh, the flame of a fire, the heart of fire. Right, so he's referring directly back to Rashi's comment. Because you can see Rashi uses that word. In the flame of fire, Rashi says, Hebrew, bilibat esh, in a flame of fire, shelahavat esh, like the heart of fire, libo, the heart, like the heart of the heavens. We can actually look up the verse if we want to. But, can you pass me that? Can you pass me a chumash? You want to look that up? Maybe. You want to look up, and then we'll finish up this section. You want to look it up, Stu? Deuteronomy 4:11. He's giving us a verse. We should look it up.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah.
What does it say?
One in English? Yeah, 4:11. You came forward and stood at the foot of the mountain. The mountain was ablaze with flames to the very skies, dark with densest
On the
clouds.
mountain was a flame, was
The mountain was ablaze with flames to the very skies, dark with densest clouds.
The Hahar Bo'er Ba'ish, Ad Lev Hashamayim.
Right.
So it was,
Shechanan, the dark cloud. The Arafel was.
is that stuff, is the firmament, right? But so it says, in the mountain Bo'er Ba'ish is ablaze in fire until the heart of the heavens. Which is so interesting. I thought, the heavens is vast and the heart is deep. Such a strange combination to say the heart of the heavens.
what goes through my mind sometimes is just when you have these great tornadoes, this change in the weather pattern. It's something so dramatic that lights up the sky.
So you have, again, it's interesting contrast between Mount Sinai, which is what Deuteronomy is talking about, and this moment, this private moment, right? The public moment at Mount Sinai, right, is when we talk about the pyrotechnics and that's the crash, boom, bang, right, the top of the mountain. You would think that the ablazement, the ablaze, right, for Moses at the bush would be more of an internal one, right? It would be some kind of, quieter fire, right, a spiritual fire, whereas, the mountain's more like Zeus, the light up the sky, light up the sky, that, just because of the environment of it. All right, so what are we left with here? Again, it's just so ripe for commentary, right? Just the bush itself. The most common, the most common, interpretation is this one about God being empathetic, right, to the people, feeling the pain, right? But I think we've come up with a lot of interesting.
When is the first time that there was dialogue between Moses and God? Was this the time? This is the first.
This is it.
There was also the water.
Right, that's when he's already taking them out.
That was the end.
Yeah, he's taking them out.
So this is the first time.
This is the first time.
So that had to be, if a human puts it into his own perspective, a very powerful internal moment.
Right.
He did not expect that.
Well, that's the thing. It's like King David too. Talk about being envious of something, right? King David and Moses, both of them, seem to have this intimate moments with God, like one after another, like just emotion, intimacy, just vulnerability, right? Just such deep vulnerability that Moses has, in this scene.
What is the most powerful thing one can feel that, it's, I don't know, it's painful, it's right, but it's so striking. If somebody's burning on fire, literally burning on fire. That's a pretty powerful sensation. And of course, you internalize that if he's having a dialogue with God. I mean, there has to be some powerful sensation, internal sensation, maybe a flame within the heart. I mean,
So you don't even need the external fire, because you got one going on right in here.
way beyond that.
Right, I don't even need a, right, I mean, that's really cool. That's really cool. Right, perhaps the message of the bush not being consumed is that that's not where the real fire is.
The fire within, that's what that dialogue with God.
Where is the fire consuming? It's consuming him, because he's got a job to do. Right? So, we so focus on, God's empathy for the Israelites, but just remember, this is a Moses God. This is a real leadership, this is a real, take everything else out for a minute. Right? If this moment doesn't work, the rest doesn't matter. Right? If God chose Moses, then it's got to work. Right? That fire's got, that burn in the belly's got to, and the kishkas has to ignite, because there's a long road ahead. So,
That's another thing about the burning bush that isn't consumed. It's eternal because it isn't consumed, it goes on forever. So God and this relationship now, the two of them are forever.
mhm. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's why the conservative movement uses it. I mean, that's why the fire is not consumed. I mean, it's always burning since the world, it's the fire that doesn't, it's the eternal light, it's in their tamid, right? It's the continuous revelation. It's God is always burning inside of us, and which gives us the power to interpret, the power to enact and be bold, and to move us forward, and to not let the fire go out. It's exactly what the image of it is. I'm gonna take a deep breath. How are the embers in your soul doing? Whew. Oof. All right, well, now we're going to talk about God a little bit, so I guess that's sort of appropriate a little bit more. They say that we don't talk about God enough.
So I just heard this song by some things. So, I forget his name. Mandy, you come to me now. You come to me something so peacefully, but I turn you away. And then they say, why is that a spiritual song? So, because what's her name? Why does he pick the name Mandy? Mandy, you come to me. Because it has the word man, and it has the letter D, or deity. So here, the man deity comes to me now, but we turn him away. And that's the story of everybody that kind of gets sent to us, then we refute them, and they're going to refute Moses, right? And they're going to challenge what Moses said.
Well, I'm sure there's also originally the Christian idea that Jesus came and we all.
And every religion, everywhere, it says this theme goes on, where God in some presence comes to us, to humanity, and humanity rejects him.
Misses it.
Yeah.
They say God
doesn't get the message in.
Where does God dwell? Anywhere where people let God in.
So man comes with love or something instead of.
But that's also the Christian message.
What?
Isn't that the Christian message as well?
Yeah.
God is wherever you.
Well, no, that's in the Torah. I mean, that's in the rabbinical texts. God is where, in the mystical texts, God is wherever God, you let God in. Right? I mean, God says, I will build you, you build for me a sanctuary so that I can dwell within, amongst you. So I can,
That's that's something.
we'll have to look at, you have another homework assignment. You have to send me the song.
I can't.
Well, Mandy, I think, is Barry Manilow.
Oh,
Yeah, that's it, Barry Manilow. That's it. That he was a great spiritual writer, is what this person was claiming. And we didn't get it because it's done in these symbols. Midrash. He presents the Midrash. Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you, sir. I don't have to go to-
I watched Jeopardy and I was.
All right.
I forget these things as fast as I get excited about.
So we're gonna move on a little bit, and it was the choice of those who've been coming together to do a first half on, which always goes over. It's just me. To do the first half on the weekly parsha, to do these, the rabbinic commentaries, and then to do some philosophy on God. And we've been using this book called Finding God. And the first week we talked about the different understandings of God in the Torah, right? The imperfect God, the binary, vengeful, merciful, all the different characteristics that God exhibits. That God is not just one thing in the Torah. Right? And then we talked last time about the rabbinic understanding of God. We talked about God, the rabbis imagine that God prays. What does God pray? And God wearing tefillin, right? That God has a set of tefillin. It says in Masechet Brachot. What does God put in his box in tefillin? And we talked about that in God's tefillin, it talks about his love, God's love for Israel, right? And that we in our prayers talk about love for God, and it's the v'ahavta, right? The v'ahavta. It says in Ahava, it says love 6 times, right? And 3 times is God's love for us, and 3 times is our love for God. And so this, the rabbinic understanding of God really, so the God of the Torah is very esoteric, right? God could be this, God could be that. But the rabbis, they have, there is an intimacy between God and Israel, not necessarily better or worse, but there is a unique relationship with this God. Whatever God is, God carries a love for Bnei Israel. Now we talk about after the destruction of the temple, that wasn't a bad message. That wasn't, historically in the context, that was a pretty good line. That was important psychological therapy. Right? And again, not only was it was also preaching against everybody who was saying now that the temple's been destroyed, God is no longer with Israel. Right? How do you know? Because look at that. Look at the rubble on the mountain, right? So this is to remind us not to listen, right, to that, right? But that God is still with us and God carries us. And so God, we may not have the temple to be the instrument, but now we have to fill it. Now we have the box. Now you got to wear it here. And you got to wear it here because it's not up there on the mountain. It's almost better, right? It's almost better here than there. Bring it into your heart. Right? So that's it. And clearly to try to do any of this, we just said at the outset, you can't say God is. The Torah says God is, and yet we're trying to come up with a composite, some kind of what God is in the Torah and the rabbinical text. And now we're going to move to some of the, this is a chronological sort of journey through God philosophy. And the next place that we go from God and rabbinic literature is Philo. This one, Philo, philosopher, Greek philosopher Philo.
Can I see the book?
Yeah. So let me hand out information here. Okay. This is his concept of spiritual monotheism. And what I did here that's different from the book, is to bring the evidence of Philo's argument. Philo was a Greek philosopher. We just had Hanukkah. right? We don't like the Greeks, right? But let's be realistic, folks. Right? The Greeks crept into the Jewish psyche. They got in. Okay, and we know that Maimonides was a big philosopher, was big on the Greek philosophers. We know it's this, it's to show. I mean, first of all, Philo was about as scholarly as you can get. As far as call him a Talmid Chacham in a sense. You can see here, Philo, a scholar, intellectual, a philosopher, a diplomat. Right? Not bad. Right? Not bad. Okay, when you think about it, right, he's doing pretty well in Alexandria, in Egypt, ancient Greece. Okay? Okay, so someone want to read the why of Philo? Why are we looking at him?
Just go.
Ron, you wanna read?
Yeah, Sandy want to read that? Why? His writings are preserved?
For non-Jews who are interested in the study of Judaism, he wrote a group of texts that we can call Exposition of the Law, demonstrating that the ordinance of the Pentateuch are in harmony with laws of nature.
Right, now, how important is that, right, for the Greek thinking, right? The physical,
Harmony.
right? Yeah, just the harmony between the physical and the spiritual, right? So, yeah, for Jewish scholars.
He wrote a number of essays that present a philosophical interpretation of Torah.
Okay.
And his last series, entitled Questions and Answers, contains comments on the specific biblical texts in the books of Genesis and Exodus that were intended for a more general audience.
Okay, so what is Philo? So why does Philo achieve such high regard?
Because he appeals to everybody.
Very nice. Okay, because he really, right, he could speak, he could do Q&As, he could do philosophy, right, and he could do science, right? So he could do science, he could do philosophy, he could do, just kind of general.
Yeah, but more than that is he was able to appeal to a wide range of people, Jews and non-Jews alike.
Okay, so, right, how does he do it? When Philo interprets the Bible, he read Greek philosophy into it by applying the then popular allegorical method, implying that in addition to the obvious meaning of the text has a hidden meaning that needs to be uncovered. Okay, now, what's so funny, guys, right? If you think about, where do we see that kind of thing? Where do we see unbridled, sort of just where do we see unbridled immersion in the esoteric, right? In the secret understanding. Where do we see that? Where do we see it most prominently? The unbridled immersion in the esoteric understanding of text is where? Kabbalah, right? 17th century, right? And Philo's doing it
1,700 years earlier.
right. It's nuts, right? We went, we were so, Philo was so strong. We spent so many centuries trying to fight against him, and we ended up right back where? We ended up right back where he was. Because that's what people are interested in, right? It's no holds barred. It's jumping off the page and leaving it behind. It's just so.
How do you define Kabbalah?
How do you define Kabbalah?
Just 2 sentences.
What?
Just 2 sentences.
Ron, you want to help me here?
Yeah, it's the metaphoric understanding of what underlies everything. So in the Bible, it starts with what is creation and how does creation come about, and then it gives these allegories and metaphor of what it is. It takes inconsistencies like the Talmud does, instead of trying to rationalize them like Rashi does or simplify them. It looks for deeper understanding that help you understand what existence is about, how creation comes about in your life, in my life, and the world generally, and what are the understandings, what are the qualities that exist from God that allow everything to be constructed. And then that's the first thing, then underneath it gives very specific qualities and shows how they relate to each other, like understanding and wisdom. These words.
You know what bothers me is that, it's not word bothers me, we say a metaphorical understanding versus what Philo is doing.
Right.
Seems less metaphorical.
Well, he can't, well, again, just to keep himself rooted, right, he does this now of nature thing.
Not very concrete, so
It's an allegory is even a better word for it. It's all allegory. All this that we live is an allegory for what God is really about. And to get to God, we have to go through that allegory, meditate on those allegorical meanings until we disappear in the process and end up back in the fire. And that's the ultimate experience about Taoists would shoot for.
Okay, so again, here's one example of, the allegory, and again, allegory, my understanding is allegory is metaphor where it's allegory is the place, it's an intentional place you're being taken in a sense, right? It's like allegory is metaphor that's chosen for you, right? It's kind of hinting at it, right? It's not, you don't have complete, it's a hint. I mean, that's the hint part. The hint part is to discover something that is there, right? You're not just making up a metaphor to explain something that may or may not be, right? That may or may not exist. Allegory is, it's there for you to find. It's a treasure hunt.
He's going to talk about a famous breakdown interpretation right here under notes of that interpretation. It ends up with the highest and the least realistic solid being solid.
Right, so you see, so first of all, he takes, again, what's in the name? He takes the names of Noah's sons, right? And why does Noah have three, right? Shem, this.
Well, I'm talking about the next
Right, no, we'll get to that, right, but so, just trying to interpret what the names mean, you can see how, where, what level, the next comment about the rules of interpretation, the surface meaning, the hinted at understanding, the commentary interpretation, and the secret understanding, to say that Shem, Ham, and Yafet mean good, evil, and Nochet, Fleshach, and Parv, right? Is clearly, is that hidden, it's how far out are we going here? So let's look at the features of his work, right? And the point of looking at the features of his work, okay, and we should have, you can have both a Tanakh and a Siddur open if you want. But again, the point, the point of these texts is to show that how pervasive, how enduring Philo's theories were. These are foundational. Okay. So number one, separation of the body and soul. Someone want to read that? Separation of body and soul. Okay, where do we find that illustrated? This first verse.
Text, the understanding of the word nefesh in the Tanakh. The Lord God formed man from the dust of the earth. He blew into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living being.
Okay, so you have Adama, okay, and then you have Nishmat Chaim. right? The physical and the spiritual, right? So Philo was taking it right out of the text, and we still talk about it today, right? I mean, you know, Maimonides responds to Philo eventually by saying you can't separate them, right? But it's sort of an exercise, right? And ultimately, you have to have them together, right? But I mean, Philo's going right to the source and right to the beginning, right to the beginning of what we have. That there is that the body is lifeless without the spiritual piece. All right, and again, I mean, you know, if we didn't put the word Philo on, if we didn't put the name Philo on these things, this would be like, yeah, I know, right? I mean,
Because historically, we end up not looking at Philo. The rabbis didn't like Philo.
right,
That's why you have to say it, even though he says the same thing.
right. Methinkest thou doth protest too much.
Doesn't like anything he says.
And yet, they're just appropriating it. And again, we've come back to it in liturgy and all these other places. All right, feature number 2. Sam, want to read that?
God has no limit. We cannot describe God.
Okay, so read the verse there.
Then I will take my hand away and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen.
Okay, so God has no limit, right? He gives 2 instances of this. We can't describe and we can't name God. Okay, so Vahasiroti, right? Et kapi, right? I will take my hand away. Right? So there, you know, this is what the allegory, or right, the allegory is the front, and what we're seeing is the back. That's all we have. But there is a front, right? Father wants to discover the essence of God.
Oh, the other is when you want to witness something, describe what you saw, you can't do it without seeing the face.
Right. Right. I mean, God is according to this verse, right? This is when Moshe says, I want to see you. Right? I mean,
You can make a concrete interpretation of that.
you're only getting a hint. Right? And see, that's the thing. I mean, you know, and Maimonides always talked about whenever the Torah used the word like nose or back or hand, that it was all metaphor, right? That it was not saying God had the Torah wasn't saying God had a back. Right? So I mean, in this case, you will see my back means I will give you
A limited view.
a hint, right? Or I will give you some little piece of whatever I am. No more. It's not like I'm giving, you know, I'm withholding something physical and giving you something physical. Neither one is physical, right? I'm only using the physical to say that what I'm showing you is only a hint of what I really am. God cannot be named. This is the burning bush moment, right? Vayomer Elohim el Moshe eheyeh asher eheyeh. I will be that which I will be.
Be whatever you allow God to come into be.
That's right. This is, I mean, I want to find the time to, you know, I was reading Brad Artson's book on process theology, which I can't even, such a hard term to define, but basically among the ideas of this this theory is that there is no future. It's anti-fate. The idea that I will be what I will be means the future is undetermined. Okay? Right now, it's the idea that God knows our intentions and God knows our history. Right? So there's a sense of accountability, right? And honesty that's necessary to move forward because God knows those things. But does God know what choices we're going to make? No, because it hasn't happened yet. Literally, each next step is being built in front of us. I think that's so exciting.
But that's contrary to what God says to Abraham, that your children will go down to Egypt and be slaves down there. And that implies God, the outright states, not implies, that God does know the future.
Okay. So how do,
So how do you reconcile that?
Oh, you didn't say that, you said God, you said that, God knows the future. God knows.
Wait,
no, I'm saying that God does not, no, the future is yet to be written,
right, it's
undetermined.
undetermined. Undetermined.
Indeterminate.
Well, I thought it was, God's omnipotent, he's got to know the future. What he doesn't know is this moment, what he'll do. He knows where you're gonna be, he knows where you were, but he doesn't know what this moment you're gonna do. So you have a choice.
I would go even more radical than that. But again, because you have to reconcile, you have to reconcile with some of these parts of the Torah.
Well,
Yes.
I think we just had an experience like that with our house.
Go ahead and tell them what that is, so I can find out.
We put our house up for sale. We lived here 50 years. And someone went to buy it. And God, I really feel God came and spoke to us and we couldn't do it. He said, no, we couldn't do it. And no, it felt like it came from somewhere in there. And I often told my daughter that, our daughter, that, well, I'll know what to do when the time comes. I'll know whether I can do it or not.
I'll just know. It'll be what it'll be. It'll be what it'll be.
What makes sense to you? So you felt that you said that God spoke to you and said, don't go, you got to do it.
But I mean, about the future, we didn't know that was happening.
So what happened? We thought, get a move. We waited for a buyer. We got a real good one.
You didn't take it?
And we didn't take it. I mean, it came at the wrong time in our lives. We're dealing with my daughter, a lot of sickness in California. We got to be away a lot. And we also had to get out of the house and get rid of everything, all in the same period of time. It was impossible to do. And we were pressed. We asked for more time, and we were told all the ways that we could make this work. She'd get rid of all our stuff, and she would rent us a place to stay. And then I came around with, well, the only problem would be if it was back out of the deal, you'd be stuck with a year's lease for $36,000. She got us a place where we could live and work. So it was insane, but we didn't know it was insane. We listened to everything that we had. Finally, the whole picture came and exploded when we saw how absurd the whole thing was. And then it brought us to the point is, why are we moving anyway? We put it on the market, we never thought anybody would try to buy it. Nobody's tried to buy a house on Academy Street for 2 or 3 years. One person did. So, and everybody's trying to get rid of their houses. Too much upkeep, too much expense, too much of everything. So it was all that everybody wants out. We just had the chance to get out. We never asked, do we still want to get out? And then we thought about the temple, the rabbi, the class, all the things we're doing, and the things we love, and many things. That's part of it. The many things we love, and we decided. Then I went, well, why did I personally want to move? And I came up with why I couldn't do this upkeep anymore. I really couldn't. I can't manage it. And I said, well, I'll manage it. You know, I'll get the carpenters, I'll get the roofer. Of course, as soon as we did it, our roof started leaking. And it was a proof test. She went and got the roofer. Made the deal, and he called tonight. Every step of the way is very good. He made the mistake of saying, we're like father and mother to him. So it came out, how old are you, Pete? She says, how old do you think?
Oh, no.
He's supposed to say 71, 72. He said 84. She said, oh, we're 77. What's that? But I'm going to take care of you, he says. Good house. It's 150 years.
But that's about the future. I didn't know.
It'll be, yeah. A lot of things. All right, but now look at feature number 3. How did we get to this?
Well, wait a minute, you gotta get back to this one, because this one really bothers me, so you don't understand.
Number
This
3.
seems very un-Jewish. No, the sentence right before that. We are body and soul, but God is just mind. Is that a Jewish idea? Or is that a Greek idea? There's a philosopher.
Well, I think this is Philo. This is Philo. You know, this is trying to have your cake and eat it too. What I mean by that is Philo likes the idea of body and soul, but we're created in the image of God, but he needs to make it clear that God is not, there's no duality in God.
But he's saying what God is, mind. Do you think that's what God is?
Well, I think he's saying that mind is only that which is integrated. It's some integrated entity, I think.
Could it be that God is our mind? That God is our mind?
God is the glue.
Is that a common Jewish idea? That a lot of Jewish people.
But you can't describe God as a body.
Well, no, I think it's the duality that Philo is trying to state. Is
not the duality.
He's going up until he's hitting it, but he's not. He's coming back a little bit by saying God is not.
Well, you could say God is one.
Well, that's what.
That would be a Jewish idea. Not body and soul. Not the separate state. God is one.
That's a different meaning. It means that God is one.
Well, so again, I think
Monotheism.
right. Well, so for Philo, one is mind because he's intellectual, right? I mean, but he's maintaining the one in his own way, and he thinks he has to.
That word mind might be a little misleading. I hate to quote Star Trek to you people, but it's basically an incorporeal being, a being with intellect but no physical body. I think that's a Jewish concept. So I think he may be Greek or following the Greeks, but I think it is also a Jewish concept.
Well, that God has intention, God has feelings, God has emotions, God has
But no body.
but no body. Right? So that's where Philo is staying away from. All right, but now we say God as a universe. This elaborates on this mind concept. Right? God is a universal mind. And El Adon, we sing it every Shabbat morning. Right? El Adon al kol hamasim baruch unvora befi kol neshama gadol v'tuvo malei olam. Right? So I mean, this is the stuff. It's so funny. Right? This is the rah-rah tune to it's really deep. This really deep theological statement. Right? I mean, so if you're asking me, is Philo, is this idea of God being the mind Jewish? I mean, El Adon. I should look in Ruben Hammer's
Well,
or
it's
something.
okay for me, because it doesn't say mine anywhere.
Well, it says da tutfuna. It says da, knowledge and wisdom. Right? I'm not sure you have to figure out what Hebrew word Philo uses.
Knowledge and wisdom in certain of God's presence. They don't say there is presence, he's within that.
Creation reflects the rule of God, who is created by the breath of life. God's grace and goodness fill the universe. Knowledge and wisdom encircle.
Yeah.
Right.
Doesn't mean that.
So there's another layer of the onion. He's inside knowledge and wisdom.
Okay.
That is a Kabbalistic. You make this map, it's a psychological metaphor. You have this infinite whatever God is, and then it comes down into
the dot, and the bina, and all the sphere.
knowledge and judgment. Understanding and wisdom is the two first vessels that are his attributes that he can move through or activate. He activates certain attributes. They're not his attributes, but he
Activate forces in the world.
Yeah. of knowledge and understanding. Then-
Incorporeally, right? Without corporeal
Right,
essence,
right.
but it's like pushing a boat across the water,
Yeah, some people
right?
say
It's like the force that pushes the boat across the water
it's the left brain and the right brain. Knowledge is one side, wisdom is the
of the universal mind. Sorry.
other. Well, that's the implant, because everything is made out of these structures, including us, including our brain, including this book. Everything is made out of those two attributes, among others.
Well, so then we go. So then we're moving into the order of the universe, right? So what are the two proofs of? So the two proofs of God's existence. One is God is sort of the more general, the rule of God, the supreme, right? It's like everything is calling out, yea, God, right? From the lowest of the low to the highest of the high of creation is calling out, right? Is calling out in declaring God's majesty or God's rule, right? And the knowledge and the wisdom now leads to the order of the universe. Right? I mean, a good king is judged by an orderly
Whiteness.
kingdom, right? A good king establishes order. Order. I'm never going to be a king. I'll just be a teacher. So anyway, okay. So again, there is a progression here, right? I mean, there is a progression, but again, just to see how pervasive these ideas are. Okay, immanent versus transcendent, feature 4. Somebody? You have a couple more minutes. Go ahead.
And immanent versus transcendent God. 3 kinds of existence. Thoughts growing out of God's existence, bodiless or incorporeal beings, independent powers, and operate within the world as God's agents. And no, the Logos is not a person.
So the logos is the term for that energy that pushes the boat, but it's not a person. Right? So look at the blessing of the morning.
Right, in the text.
Asher natan l'sechvi bina lehavchin. Enabled us to distinguish. Right? The force behind the wisdom. You guys see where we are, feature 4?
The second page here.
Second page. I mean, what does it mean? Asher natan l'sechvi bina lehavchin b'yamu b'mayla. This is so parental, right? This is teaching them how to fish, not fishing for them. And I'm sorry we're sort of rushing through. I mean, all of these could be huge conversations. Okay, so we've got chosenness now. Right, so now we've got that. So even back then, Philo was maintaining the rabbinic concept of chosenness. Right? With the concept of standing at Mount Sinai. So there's, good Jewish boy Philo, okay? Good Jewish boy Philo. And the problem of evil? It's all about, Sam, want to read this last one? Problem of evil?
Evil can emerge from God. God can bring punishment. Righteous suffer because they are not perfect in their righteousness. Evil is a test of faithfulness. People suffer because of misdeeds of their ancestors. Those people are held accountable only from themselves.
Okay, so now, that might be a typo, only for themselves. But now again, number 5 is one of the biggest tensions in Judaism. Does one generation suffer for the? But this is the book of Job dealing with suffering. These are all the major arguments, right, that are prevalent from rabbinic time continuing in Philo, and really, again, not only was Philo pervasive, he was comprehensive, right? We talk about people like Rashi and people like Maimonides, right? And who had their fingers in everything, right? They were, their knowledge was unbelievable, right? They just, and then you've got Philo, who was the same kind of guy. You just don't know where the capacity, how he had so much room in his head. But he was dealing with all of this. Just keeping it all up in the air. Not wanting to rule anything out. And certainly on the question of evil. And then in summary, right? Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Right? The soul that you, my God, has given me is pure. Okay, Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. This is at the bottom of the page. I don't have a translation, but again, you can look. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama
The soul that you gave me is pure and holy.
The soul that you, my God, has given me is pure. You created it. It's right here on page 4. You created it. You formed it. You breathed it into me. You keep body and soul together. So there it is. You keep body and soul together even though they're separate. One day you will take my soul from me to restore to me in life eternal. So long as the soul is within me, I acknowledge you, Adonai, my God, my ancestors' God, Master, El Adon, Adon Olam, right? It's all there. Master of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Adon Kol HaNeshamot. Praise to you, Adonai, restores the soul, the lifeless, exhausted body. So it's all Elohai Neshama. It's all in our liturgy. It's amazing how we come back. As you said, right? You said before, right? The man D, right? That Philo was giving it all to us, right? And we protested, we argued, and in many ways we've come back to it. Maybe I think we've appropriated in some ways. We've shed some of the Greek influence, but in a lot of ways, it's, and again, the last thing to say is, was Philo expecting, right? Was Philo expecting, was he expecting the Industrial Revolution? Was he expecting the boom of science? And was he expecting? It's almost like Philo was talking to the modern mind, right? The logic, he's playing both sides, right? He's being allegorical and metaphorical and mystical, and yet he's also being very concrete and very, very rooted, right? Very rooted in our experience and what we see, what we know, how we think. Right?
I don't think anything of the modern era changes anything with his interpretation.
Right, it's almost like he knew it was coming.
Well, they say there's
But we haven't advanced that much, really.
That's more, there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
The human condition and human interaction hasn't evolved all that much. So if he said something that's intelligent and sufficiently broad, it can be applied and interpreted today.
I don't think it's fair to say that this is so broad. I think there's a lot of specifics here, but he's not. I think what he's not doing is ruling anything out. That's what That's right. He is playing it safe a little bit, not necessarily by being general, but by not ruling out any specifics. He delves into the specific, but never says except the stuff about corporeal because he'd get excommunicated if he said that. So there are some limits even to Philo. He has to make certain red lines, but yeah, I think I don't know. Yeah, there's nothing new under the sun, and that's not a bad thing. That's a beautiful thing.
I keep telling people about this book can't help myself. Have you heard of the book Sapiens? It's for Homo sapiens, sapiens. It's the whole history of humans, how they evolved, animals, nature, thoughts. And it's from the moment we came on Earth, there was war and tension. It really, it's a wonderful one. It's a well-known book. It's called Sapiens, and it's a whole history of life, mankind, from our very beginning, from where we came from, and the whole creation.
Quite an evolution.
Thank you.
All right, guys.
You know those lyrics that I said?
I have to think about it probably. You gave without taking, something like that. Wait a minute, before you leave, should I make an announcement about, depending on how bored you are, at 10 o'clock tonight.
Oh, you mentioned that,
On
yeah.
channel 13, there's a series called Time Scanners. And basically, a couple of troublemakers like me took high-tech lasers